Greetings, people. So this video will talk about evolving over time, and you know, I think as an independent contractor, owner operator, you got to evolve. Things are changing. You got to change with them. And there's a saying that dinosaurs go extinct, and I've met some dinosaurs in trucking. you know, I remember when before ELD's mandate came out. Obviously, I mean it's only been out for a few years, but um, paper logs, it was there for a long time, decades, and the ELDs were becoming more common in trucks. Not at even before the ELD mandate, their ELDs were being used voluntarily by companies, and some of the old timers they didn't like it. They're like, I'm not doing that electronic logs. They're like, the hell with it, I'll retire. And these guys were, kind of like dinosaurs. They did not want to evolve with the times, and they're going to end their trucking career rather than, going to electronic logs. You know, I've seen this repeatedly in my work history. I remember one of my first jobs after going to college, I had an entry level job in the office, and this is a time frame in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and the internet was becoming more common. And I told my boss, I said, I really think we ought to create a website. So they didn't have it, and he said, no, that's stupid. I'll never do that. And here I was in my 20s telling the owner, who was in his 50s, that he needed to create a website, and he didn't want to do it. He was kind of like a dinosaur. I remember before the internet, George, I think it was the first one, Herbert Bush, the older George Bush president, the successor to Reagan. He was doing, the national televised speech. I think maybe it might have been a address to Congress, and the State of the Union type address. And he was talking about a information superhighway, and people are like, "What the hell is he talking about?" Well, he was talking about the internet, but the internet didn't exist. Nobody knew what he was talking about. He was like, well, we're going to have this informational superhighway. It's like, okay, whatever that is, sounds good. But he was talking about the internet, and that was like 1988, 1989 time frame. And then, I think, the early 90s is when computers were starting to become more common, where you had a desktop computer, and word processors was a big step because you used to have to learn how to type manually. And if you made a mistake, you're screwed. You'd get in there with the little eraser and try to correct it, but oftentimes you'd have to pull that sheet of paper out of the typewriter, throw it away, and start all over again. And the people who got hired were the people who knew how to type without making mistakes. So you had some of these ladies who were typists. They could type 50 words per minute or 75 words per minute without a mistake. And the boss would use dictation. Okay, so the typist, or this would often be a secretary, would sit there with pen and pad, write down everything that the boss said. They would write it down in shorthand, and then they take their notes back to their typewriter, convert shorthand, to long form, and put it all on the type it all up manually, one sheet of paper at a time, without no mistakes. So those were what some of the jobs were like, before computers came along. And then, the word processors were like electronic typewriters, and you could do 2 or 3 lines of type at a time, And if you made a mistake, you could hit the back key and correct it. And then once you're satisfied with the little printout on the word processing typewriter, if you were satisfied there's no mistakes, you'd hit the button for print, and it would print that paragraph, one paragraph at a time. You type another paragraph, check it for spelling and everything, and then hit OK, and then it would print out. And the technology just kept evolving. And I remember, even when I was in high school, I was like, well, I really was into the computers. This was the newest, greatest thing. And I was kind of talked out of it. It was too bad. I was into it, and I was interested in it. And the older generations just didn't see the value in it. They're like, well, computers are stupid. You don't want to waste your time with computers. Well, that was a big mistake, because I'd probably be retired a millionaire by now if I had gone into computers. But, back then, you're looking at printers that were like dot matrix. They'd make these funny noises because it was just a printer head making impact on the paper, one dot at a time, in order to create a document. But oftentimes the older generation is not in tune with developing technology. They don't value it. They don't use it. They're not up to speed, and many times they resist it. Just like the old time truck drivers who are used to using log sheets don't want nothing to do with electronic logs. It's like, why? Electronic logs makes it easier. Why are you fooling around with a little ruler and trying to record all your change of duty status and try to write on that piece of paper, and then you're going to have some state trooper scrutinize every 15 minutes and say, oh, you miscalculated your hours, you're off by half an hour. Just look, electronic logs did. I'm one of those drivers that actually embraced the technology. I'm like, thank God there's electronic logs, because now I don't have to try to, be perfect and writing down all my log sheets. I think log sheets are a pain in the ass, but other drivers, older drivers, wanted the log sheets. Log sheets were kind of like fairy tales. You can make them log sheets tell any kind of story you want it to say. And it gave them a lot of flexibility. And then, of course, the guys on the spot market abused the hell out of it. I mean, I even had some old timers at Crete tell me what they used to do back in the day with logbooks. You had one for show and others for dough. And it wouldn't be uncommon to have 2, 3, 4 different logbooks. So did they follow the rules? No. They didn't follow the rules. A lot of these trucking companies got started by cheating like hell. They started, even before the CDL program was in place. Some of these trucking companies are quite old, and then they never believed in log sheets to begin with. And they were never, really trying to be in compliance with hours of service. So then ELDs come along and they're like, we don't want ELDs. We don't, why we need ELDs? Well, it's because you're cheating like hell. It's like, so they were resisting the change in technology. They don't want to adapt. And if you're an old dinosaur and you don't want to evolve, you will go extinct. And I think younger workers have a better feel for the direction that careers in technology, where they're going. It's something where I work at it all the time. I'm always working on my technical skills, my computer skills. Right now I have to give thought to, okay, how can I use AI and develop my career? Because this is a new developing technology, And it's like, I don't want to become a dinosaur either. It's like, I don't want to resist it. I better learn how to adapt to it and try to evolve with it, and because otherwise, I could fall victim to the changes in technology. So this is something younger workers, I would say, when you hear older workers poo-poo the use of technology, don't get too discouraged, because every generation uh, has trouble letting go. This like, they don't want to embrace the change. It's hard to change, especially when you're older. It's hard to change. You kind of get set in your ways, and you have a routine. It's working for you. Things are good. It's like steady as she goes. And then here comes new technology, and you're like, I don't like it. I don't want it. Things like that. Younger generations see that technology, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. This technology is kind of makes it fun. It's like, uh, they like it. They like using technology. I remember when GPS wasn't around. No one had GPS units. You know, um, People really didn't travel very far. They'd get lost. You have to stop and ask for directions. You know, um, you had paper maps. Things like that. And then I remember when MapQuest came out as a website. And it's like, okay, I could pull MapQuest up on my laptop, and I can get turn by turn instructions. And you could print those instructions out. This is before GPS. And then GPS units came out, and it was like it totally blew everybody's mind. It's like you'll never get lost now. It's just like a GPS. You can go anywhere you want. And same thing with smartphones and things like that. But it's interesting to talk to the older generations, and you see how technology has changed decade over decade over decade. Um, Even talking to old truck drivers, it's interesting sometimes to talk to them, and you could see some of the obstacles that they have to face, and the fear that they have. They're afraid of the technology, and the younger workers, the younger drivers, they're not afraid of it. They're going to use it. Older workers are, they're fearful of it, and they don't want it. I hear guys talk about their trucks. They're like, look, my truck, I used to drive a truck. It was real simple. It had a clutch, 10 speed. I mean, I had a 10 speed when I first started out, and I enjoyed driving stick. I really enjoyed it. Now they're all automatics. But you hear guys talk about their trucks. They're like, the truck was so much simpler. The truck, they knew everything about their truck. They knew how it pulled on hills, and they knew what gear to put it in going down the mountains. And then now here comes the technology. Everything's automatic. You got bells, whistles, and warning devices, and lights, and it just took all the joy out of driving. You can't even control what gear you're in. And they don't like it. The old drivers don't like the new technology in these trucks, and the technology keeps coming. It's not going to stop. And you can't hold on to the past. You got to adapt to the times. You got to evolve with the times, or you're going to be a dinosaur. You're going to absolutely be a dinosaur. Time is going to pass you by, and you're going to feel like you don't even belong in a truck anymore because it's not what it used to be. The technology is just going by leaps and bounds. Younger drivers going to embrace it. They are raised with this technology. They expect it. They may not even take a job if it doesn't have technology. Older workers are you got to get with the times. You got to get with the time. You do have competition out here, And the competition is getting younger and smarter, you know, and they know how to use all this stuff, you know. And if you want to stay competitive, you're going to have to evolve with the times, or you're going to become a dinosaur. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.